Imagine this. It's Monday morning. You arrive at work and head down to the vault of what is supposed to be one of the safest places in the world, a central bank. The doors are intact. The alarm system is fully operational. The security cameras show nothing unusual. No broken windows, no forced entrances, not even a single bullet hole. Yet a horrifying sight is waiting inside. More than 3.5 tons of cash have simply vanished. And whoever did it managed to pull it off without triggering a single alarm. So how is something like this even possible? Today we're diving into one of the smartest and most sophisticated bank robberies ever carried out. This is the story of the 2005 Brazilian central bank heist, a crime that changed the history of organized robbery forever. At first glance, everything looked completely ordinary. In the Brazilian city of Fortaleza, a small commercial building was rented. A sign was placed above the entrance, "Landscape and Garden Services." The neighbors welcomed the new business without giving it a second thought. Workers arrived early every morning. Trucks came and went throughout the day. Large amounts of soil were constantly being transported away. Everything looked exactly as it should for a landscaping company. After all, who would ever suspect a gardening business? But behind those walls, something entirely different was happening. The company had never been created to mow lawns or plant flowers. It had one single purpose: to carry out one of the biggest bank robberies the world had ever seen. The operation had been in preparation for months. The gang consisted of around 25 people. These weren't ordinary criminals. Among them were people with engineering knowledge, experienced construction workers, electricians, logistics specialists. Every member had a specific role because they knew one thing: walking into a central bank with guns would be suicide. The police would arrive within minutes. The alarms would immediately alert the authorities. Instead, they chose a method nobody expected. If they couldn't enter through the front door, they would enter from underneath. The gang began digging a secret tunnel from their fake landscaping office toward the central bank. The tunnel stretched for nearly 78 meters, almost the length of a football field. But its length wasn't what made it remarkable. The tunnel had electricity. It had a ventilation system. Wooden beams reinforced the walls to prevent collapse. This wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was an underground engineering project. Every detail had been carefully planned. Even the dirt they removed posed no problem. Truck after truck carried away tons of soil every single day. Since everyone believed they were running a landscaping business, nobody questioned it. For months, thousands of kilograms of earth disappeared from the site. No neighbors became suspicious, not even the police. Finally, the weekend they had been waiting for had arrived. On Saturday night, the central bank was closed. The city was quiet. The streets were almost empty. Underground, however, one of the most daring criminal operations in history was about to begin. The crew carefully dug through the final section of the tunnel. Only a thin layer of concrete separated them from the bank's vault. Every movement had to be precise. One wrong hit could trigger vibrations, alert security, or even cause part of the tunnel to collapse. After months of planning, the moment of truth had finally arrived. With the last section of concrete removed, the gang broke into the vault. Standing before them were stacks upon stacks of cash. But there was something unusual about the money. Most of it consisted of 50 real banknotes that had not yet entered circulation. Even more importantly, many of these bills had not yet had their serial numbers officially recorded. That meant tracking the stolen money would be far more difficult. It was almost as if fate had handed the robbers the perfect target. Without wasting a second, the gang got to work. Large canvas bags were filled with cash, one after another, bag after bag. Every member knew exactly what to do. No shouting, no panic, no unnecessary movement. Everything had been rehearsed. Within hours, they had stolen approximately 160 million Brazilian reais. At the time, that was worth around 70 million US dollars. The cash weighed nearly 3.5 tons. Just imagine trying to move that much money. It wasn't something one or two people could simply carry away. The robbers formed a human chain inside the tunnel. The heavy bags were passed from one person to another until they reached the fake landscaping office. Outside, vehicles were already waiting. The money was quietly loaded into trucks and driven away. No alarms, no explosions, no gunfire, no hostages, just silence. By the time the operation was over, the gang had vanished without leaving a single obvious trace. The city went to sleep, completely unaware that one of the largest bank robberies in history had just taken place. It wasn't until Monday morning that anyone realized something was terribly wrong. Employees arrived at the central bank expecting an ordinary workday. Everything looked perfectly normal. The entrance was untouched. The security systems appeared to be functioning. Nothing suggested that a crime had occurred. Then they entered the vault. For a few moments, nobody spoke. There, in the floor of the vault, was a massive hole leading deep underground. Millions of dollars were gone. The room fell silent. Within minutes, police officers flooded the building. Investigators couldn't believe what they were seeing. There were no signs of forced entry, no damaged security doors, no evidence of a violent break-in. Instead, there was only a professionally constructed tunnel stretching nearly 80 meters beneath the city. One detective reportedly described it as something more like an engineering project than a crime scene. The question everyone was asking was simple. How could a tunnel of this size be built beneath a busy city without anyone noticing? Within hours, the robbery became national news. Television stations interrupted their regular broadcasts. Newspapers called it the crime of the century. How could thieves steal millions from the central bank without firing a single shot? Investigators immediately launched one of the largest criminal investigations in Brazilian history. At first, the police had almost nothing to work with. The robbers hadn't left fingerprints inside the vault. There were no surveillance images of the suspects. No eyewitnesses had seen anyone entering or leaving the bank. The only real clue was the tunnel. So investigators followed it, meter by meter. Eventually, it led them to the small landscaping company just blocks away from the bank. From the outside, it still looked like an ordinary business. But once officers entered the building, everything changed. The floor had been ripped open. Construction tools were scattered everywhere. Industrial lights hung from the ceiling. Ventilation pipes disappeared into the darkness below. The fake office was nothing more than the entrance to the tunnel. It immediately became clear that this operation had cost hundreds of thousands of dollars before the robbery had even begun. The criminals had invested enormous amounts of time and money into making sure the plan would succeed, and somehow, it had. The investigation quickly expanded across Brazil. Police traced phone calls, followed financial transactions, interviewed hundreds of witnesses. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to come together. Over the following month, several members of the gang were arrested. Some confessed. Others refused to say a single word. But something unexpected happened. The robbery itself wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Once the money had been stolen, trust inside the gang started to disappear. Everyone wanted a bigger share. Some members believed they had been cheated. Others feared someone would cooperate with the police. The enormous fortune that had united them soon turned them against one another. Several suspects were murdered before they could stand trial. Others disappeared without a trace. Some managed to flee the country. To this day, investigators believe not every participant has been identified. Then came the biggest mystery of all. What happened to the money? Authorities recovered only a small portion of the stolen cash. The overwhelming majority simply vanished. No one knows exactly where it went. Some investigators believe the money was smuggled into neighboring countries. Others think it was laundered through businesses over many years. There are even theories suggesting that part of it is still hidden somewhere in Brazil. But after more than 2 decades, no one has been able to prove any of those theories. It's entirely possible that millions of dollars from the robbery are still out there, waiting to be discovered. More than 20 years have passed since the robbery, yet security experts still study this case. Not because it involved violence, but because it didn't. No gunfight, no hostages, no explosions, no high-speed police chase. Instead, the robbers relied on something far more powerful: patience, discipline, planning, and an extraordinary understanding of human behavior. They knew people rarely question what looks ordinary: a landscaping company, workers carrying dirt, trucks coming and going. To everyone else, it was just another business. In reality, it was the entrance to one of the most sophisticated criminal operations ever executed. The robbery exposed major weaknesses in physical security. It proved that protecting doors, locks, and cameras isn't always enough. Sometimes the greatest threat comes from a direction nobody is watching: underground. Even today, one question continues to fascinate people around the world. Was this really the work of only a few dozen criminals? Or was there a much larger organization operating behind the scenes? Some investigators believe the robbery required financial backing far beyond what the arrested suspects could provide. Others argue that the gang was simply made up of exceptionally skilled criminals who spent months preparing every detail. The full truth may never be known, and that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. The Brazilian central bank heist wasn't just about stealing money, it was a masterclass in planning. Every step had been calculated, every risk had been considered, every obstacle had a solution, for a brief moment. The robbers outsmarted one of the most heavily protected financial institutions in the country. Although many members of the gang were eventually arrested and some were killed in the years that followed, one mystery remains unsolved. A large portion of the stolen money has never been recovered. Somewhere, it may still exist, hidden, waiting. Or perhaps it has already been spent piece by piece without anyone ever realizing where it came from. Stories like this remind us that reality can sometimes be more unbelievable than fiction. The greatest crimes are not always committed with violence. Sometimes they are carried out with patience, intelligence, and months of careful preparation. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part of all. If you enjoyed this true crime story and want to see more unbelievable cases from around the world, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Which famous robbery should we cover next? Let us know in the comments below.